Michaela Vernava for the Between the Tackles podcast for NESN.com, and I am joined today by NFL Films producer James Weiner. James, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Now, I just finished, and I feel lucky to have gotten a sneak preview of Rodney Harrison, A Football Life. I know it premieres on NFL Network this Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and what a production. It really was incredible. Incredible film.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
I want to start off by asking you, when producing this film, what was the main thing you wanted the viewer to take away after watching it?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I think Rodney Harrison sort of has an interesting place in NFL history, and he's the type of player that you loved if he played for you and you hated when he played against him. And I think that's true of fan bases all around the country as well. And he's on TV now. He's still controversial. And I think a lot of people don't realize what kind of player he really was. And I think some people, many people, see him as controversial, as someone who is dirty, as someone who's always seemed to be at the spear of controversy. And I think it was important part of that is true, certainly, but to tell the whole story and how it got there, and how here's a guy who played, he came into the NFL in 1994. And he was in the mold of Ronnie Lott. He was a hard-hitting intimidator at safety. And that type of player was revered back then, like Ronnie Lott was a decade earlier. But midway through his career, that started to change. And the NFL was starting to legislate dangerous hits out of the game. And he was target number one as far as things they wanted to eliminate, and then the type of play that he exemplified. And as a result of that, he became somewhat of an outlaw. And he was basically a guy who played in the wrong era. And I just thought that was an interesting approach that people hadn't considered.
It was just so entertaining from start to finish. And I would say what I took away from it is whether you love him or hate him, because like you said, he was a very polarizing and controversial player. Whether you love him or hate him, though, I think that there's a respect level you can gain for him in watching this film. It definitely reveals a lot. And even before his football career began, I enjoyed the part of him talking about why he is the way he is, why he was such a ferocious, aggressive player out on the field, and it started with his relationship with his mom. How did you get him to talk about those heavy subjects? And he even got very emotional talking about them.
He did, and that's probably the part that'll surprise people. I've interviewed a couple hundred people, probably a couple hundred former players. I've done about 10 football lives, and I can't think of a more candid interview than Rodney Harrison. And all those things, all those emotions came out real quickly. I did not have to force that out of him. I didn't even have to win his trust very, very much. I mean, he hardly knew me when I sat down in the chair with him. He's got a lot to say, is what it comes down to. And in the first half hour, I knew I had a winner. I had tears. I had him being funny. I had him being angry. So to answer your question, how did I get it out of him? It's in him. And you just had to sit him down and ask him. And it wasn't, he's happy to talk about it. He's eager to talk about it. And he's got a lot to say. And a lot of that comes out in the film.
That's extremely interesting because it does come out in the film. The emotions are very evident, and that's why I asked. And I was thinking, gee, this must have taken a little bit to build his trust, to get him to reveal some of the things that he did. But since that wasn't the case, do you think that he wanted to deliver a message to fans, to football fans, to people who are going to watch this? Do you think that there's something that he wants people to know about him?
I think one of the things that one of the sort of more subtle messages of the film is if you take the time to get to know me, I think you will like me, is one of the things he says. And I think that is very important to Rodney Harrison. Deep down, I think he does want to be liked. He has the tough guy image, and I don't care how people think of me on the field. I'm out there to win games. I'm out there to play the way I know how to play. But here's a guy who does care how he's perceived. And I think that's why we gave some really thoughtful answers.
And now he is the enforcer out there. It is echoed many, many times in the film. Hit him in the mouth. Hit him in the mouth. That attitude that he had. And there were a lot of heavy topics hit in this film, and specifically the concussion issue, which is a really, really big one right now. How willing was he to talk about that stuff?
He was very willing to talk about it. In the film, it's the way that we address it is through Junior Seau, which was his idol and was kind of the wake-up call for the sport, I would say, his death. And Rodney was closer to it than most anybody. They played 11 out of 15 years together. And the way Rodney played, it's one of the first things you think of. So he's got a lot to say on the subject. Not all of it made the film. But one thing that does make the film that I think he wants to make pretty clear is, to some extent, he feels like it can be managed. The effects of concussions, at least in his life, and his ability to stay active mentally is important to his well-being and to his continued health. And I don't know, that's a message that has been communicated throughout this whole concussion discussion. But I thought that was sort of an interesting take on things, that he has bad days from some CTE-related issues, but in his mind, he feels that by staying mentally active and by retirement for these football players, a lot of them don't know what to do, and he makes sure to stay busy and keep in shape and eat healthy and all that. And he is in shape. He does eat healthy. He looks like he can play. He can still play football. That has contributed to his health, to being healthy. So I guess that's what makes it to the film. He's got a lot more to say about it that didn't make it in the film, and he'll probably find a forum one day to explain it, to say all he has to say about that.
Now, Rodney Harrison's football life, there really is so much to it. I feel like, as you said, there are things that didn't make it into the film. How important was it for you as a producer to make sure that the concussion topic got into the film and to make sure that you delivered the message in the right way, because it's sort of a fragile, sensitive topic?
It's very fragile, and working in NFL films, it's been a issue that we've been grappling with for at least a decade. How do we talk about this candidly? And I guess to answer your question, originally when we do pitches for who we want to do a football life on, and I submitted Rodney Harrison, I wasn't sure we were ready to do a Rodney Harrison show because we would have to at least at some point discuss Junior Seau and concussions and CTE. And when they came back to me and said, we're ready to do a Rodney Harrison film, I was still a little skeptical. So I put it together the way I thought it should be put together, and then it still has to go to the league, and it still had to go to Los Angeles, which is where the NFL Network is, and some PR people to see if they were comfortable with what's being shown here. And to my surprise, and to some extent to everyone's credit, it was more or less left untouched from the way I put it together. So to answer your original question, how did I feel about it going in? I knew that the way he played and the last 10 years, the issues that's come about as far as legislating the game and regulating the game, and the hits to the head, and like you said, the hits in the mouth, which he brings up, which is really, I think, a metaphor. I don't think it's actually hitting somebody in the mouth. Mm-hmm. I knew it had to be addressed and it had to be handled carefully. I think what this does, it puts a little bit of a more optimistic spin on it than the message we've been hearing for the last 5, 7, 8 years about the whole issue.
I certainly took that away after I finished watching it as well. And again, about Rodney Harrison being the enforcer that he was, and as I've already said, a polarizing figure in the game. But this film addresses that he wasn't as polarizing as people probably would think he was among other NFL players. And you got to talk to a lot of his former teammates. What was it like talking with them about Harrison? Well,
for the most part, only teammates, I believe, made it into the film, and I did not find anyone, and I didn't interview everybody who played against him, obviously, but I couldn't say anyone that came out and said that he was dirty and they hated him. But it certainly existed, because he was voted the dirtiest player in 2003 and 2004, according to a Sports Illustrated poll of his peers. So that was out there. But what you're saying, I think, is his teammates ultimately loved him, but not initially. Initially, in San Diego, I have Nate Trombean saying, we didn't know what to make of this arrogant fifth-round draft pick who thought he belonged on the field with the rest of us as a starting defensive back. And we have the Patriots in 2003 saying, when he got there, day one, he knocks out Troy Brown in a hit over the middle. Troy Brown throws a football at him. And then a week later, he hits Kevin Falk and starts a fight. So clearly, he had a tough introduction on both teams. But once they got to know him, which is essentially one of Rodney Harrison's messages, once you get to know me, I think you will like me. Once they got to know him, saw what kind of player he was, what kind of competitor he was, and what kind of work ethic he had, then you couldn't help but at least admire the guy, and then ultimately you like the guy. And I think that's what happened with the 2003 Patriots. On top of that, they released Lawyer Malloy, essentially, to make room for Rodney Harrison to start the season. So not only do they not know what to make of this free agent signing who's starting fights in camp, they just lost one of their most popular players because he's there. What turns the tide, or at least helps turn the tide in 2003, is Bill Belichick names him captain without a team vote. Because he felt like the team didn't know him well enough to name him captain, but he felt like Rodney Harrison had earned the position. So now he's sort of a self-appointed captain by Bill Belichick. He's already won Belichick's respect. And suddenly he's making plays, he's winning games. In the playoffs, he's one of the key players in 2003 and certainly in the 2004 postseason run. And then he becomes obviously a New England Patriot hero. So that's the Rodney Harrison story, which I don't know that people have fully appreciated before.
And anyone in New England and probably even just a general NFL fan know that Bill Belichick is a very honest individual. And I'm not going to give it away, but there is a quote that I wrote down from Bill Belichick about Rodney Harrison that really grabbed me. I thought it was really something to hear him say these specific words about Rodney Harrison. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it. People should definitely watch this film. But before I let you go, James, the Super Bowl 42 was in this film. What did Rodney have to say about that?
Super Bowl 42, what I thought was interesting about that is most people remember from that game the David Tyree catch, which was on Rodney Harrison. It was for Patriot fans, I'm sure they remember it well, but it was a crazy play where it was third down. Eli Manning escaped what looked like a certain sack, threw the ball up in the air in the middle of the field, which is where Rodney Harrison typically patrols, and David Tyree catches the ball on his helmet as Rodney Harrison tries to knock it down. That's not the play, curiously, that keeps Rodney Harrison up at night. And maybe that's the play that keeps a lot of Patriot fans up at night, as it ruined what was their perfect season. The play that keeps him up at night was the touchdown pass to Plaxico Burress that gave the Giants what ended up being the go-ahead touchdown. In those 3 seconds before the snap of the ball, and when they were trying to figure out how to defend the Giants' formation, Rodney had an inkling what was happening, and he regrets very much not making a defensive switch. And ultimately it left Plexico Burress one-on-one and Ellis Hobbs. We all know what happened after that. So that discussion is in the film, and I think it'll become as a surprise that's the play that bugs Rodney Harrison.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to listen to him walk us through his thoughts and everything that went on in that moment of that game that so many of us remember so well. And it definitely was revealing and interesting to hear his take on it. All around, the journey that I was taken on in watching this film was exciting. It was captivating. I had chills throughout. It was definitely a worthwhile watch. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the phone with you. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it. And just, again, so everyone knows, this will be premiering on NFL Network Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I highly recommend you watch.
I appreciate it very much. It's very kind words. Thank you very much.
James, thanks for talking with us today. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.